Just to establish the governance structure for actually how we actually govern the data, we set up this governance structure. So the top consists of the data steering committee, which comprises of only three executives in the organization, and they have the complete authority over the data governance. Uh, they meet monthly. The next layer is the data governance council, which comprises of uh, 4 to 5 senior managers, and they have limited authority, and then they meet fortnightly. There's a data working group that sits underneath the Data Governance Council where they meet weekly, and it comprises of uh, different data champions from different business units. And usually they are data owners, they could be open data champions, database admins, and data stewards from different business units. So the data steering committee has a holistic view of all the data projects that goes across the organization, and more importantly they are very focused on how the data governance is actually helping the organization. I'll talk about the data governance evaluation framework at the end of my uh, series. So just to do the data governance, because we are decentralizing the data governance, we want to have a set of principles to actually to help us. So the first principles we have to in the data governance is that it has to adhere to all the legislation and policies. We want to make sure that the data is classified properly as per the legislation and all of the policies are applied on the data. And the data governance has to be transparent. Without transparency, it's hard to build trust. The third and more important principle is it has to be easy to understand and use, because we are decentralizing the data governance. Even a normal data entry operator, every single business units operations, and also the managers should be able to understand the data governance principles, and it should be easy to use. So just to get these principles right, we looked at the data to insight journey. So most of the time we get the data from different data sources. We put it on a landing zone, usually in a federated model, and then we pretty much curate the data set so that it is trusted. And then from the trusted zone, that's where it actually feeds to different dashboards and different business systems, and sometimes it goes to the data scientist. But to get the data governance right, what we really want to understand, our approach is we'll start from the dashboard and we work backwards. So the dashboards is where most of the business decisions are being made, or most of the key metrics are presented. And then the step before that is where you want to do data governance. And before the data governance, you want to get to the data source. Of course, before you want to get to the data source, you want to understand where the data is coming from, where the data actually originates, so which is from the business system. So our approach is to work backwards to move forward. So what's the key principle that our governance is based on? So these are only the few principles. The data access controls must be applied at the data layer. We will not apply a data access at the presentation layer, in which most of the dashboard or the BI tools facilitate. So this is our core principle. The secondary use of the data must be extremely clear before you even actually use it. This actually aligns with our principles on adhering to the legislation and the policies, because most of the time in the public sector agencies we collect data, and then if you want to use it for secondary purpose you have to get consent from the people, and there are different regulations around how the data has to be handled as well. So the secondary use of the data must be clear. The metadata should be captured during data instantiation. So what I mean by that is, so when it comes to the landing zone and when it goes to the curate zone, this is what I'm talking about the data instantiation, and the metadata has to be clearly captured. I'll talk about what kind of metadata we actually capture during the data instantiation. And the privacy is by design. And of course, the data must adhere to standards. So if you look at our data quality, the principles are extremely simple. The data must be created at the source with high quality, period. And we believe that the data quality has to be fixed at the source, never to be manipulated in any of the landing or the curated zone. It has to be fixed at the source. So we really want the data to be captured at high quality during when it is created. The data capture must be automated as possible. Most of the time, the legacy business system have free text, which means people are have flexibility to actually enter any data they want, but there's no standard to it. Sometimes the training is given to the staff, but if there's no proper training, they have flexibility to enter the data in different ways. What we really want to do is we really want to automate the process. So it's usually from a drop-down menu or from an option button. Usually it's a selection process. That's how we want to capture the data. The other next principle is the stakeholders need to know the importance of the data quality. If they so which means they have to understand what kind of decisions people are actually making on the data they're capturing. So the, the data entry operator should actually know the importance of the data he's collecting. The next rule is all the business rules and the data validation rules has to be captured and has to be separated from the data layer. So I'm talking about three different layers here. One is the data layer where the data gets stored, and the data validation and the business rules has to be captured on the different layer and has to be offered to the data layer as an API. And next is the presentation layer.